Well, poor Ole had gotten sick. You all know Ole and Lena, right? You can't live in this part of the world and not know Ole and Lena. Ole got sick. And like most men, he didn't do anything about it. He let it go, he let it go. Pretty soon he's really sick. So finally Lena has to take him in. And they go into the doctor, and the doctor gives him a thorough examination and then says, Lena, let's send Ole out into the waiting room. I want to have a few words with you. So Ole goes out in the waiting room. The doctor tells Lena, Lena, Ole's pretty sick. He should have come in a long time ago. And he may not make it. However, he might make it if you, Lena, are willing to spend some time with him, play games with him, sing with him, take him out into the community, have friends and relatives come over, serve him food, treats, pray with him, have fun with him, sit with him, and he just might live. He just might make it. We're going to provide the best medicine we have. He just might make it if you're willing to spend that time with him and that energy. So Lena goes back out into the waiting room, and Ole says, well then, Lena, what did the doctor say? She said, Ole, you're not going to make it. You've only got about a week to live. Well, that's a joke you've probably all heard before.
No.
But it really highlights how important activities are in the life of a patient or resident. And it's always been that way, as you're going to find out. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to learn a few things, we're going to have some fun, and you guys are going to get to play a game. So, over the next half hour, you're going to learn 3 things. You are going to learn, and you all have a handout. Feel free to take notes. Feel free to line your birdcage with it, whatever you want to do with it. But for now, you can follow along. You'll know where we're at in our presentation. You're going to learn 3 things. You are going to learn, number 1, you are going to see how activities has always been a part of people's lives when they're recovering from an illness or when they're getting up in years. You are then going to see how important of a part activities plays on the entire care team who takes care of our residents. And then you are going to learn the 6 areas of importance that we in activities try and focus on in the lives of our residents. Physical, emotional, cognitive, social, spiritual, and creative. And it won't necessarily be in that order. Here's a guy right here. Who knows who this guy is? This is one good-looking guy. He was pretty popular with the ladies back in ancient Greece. This is Hippocrates,
Thank God.
or as some people call him, Hippocrates. And some people consider him the father of Western medicine. And he, along with his contemporaries in Egypt and probably China and Rome, he lived in Greece. And actually, he must have known a thing or two. He lived to be 70 years old, which was pretty old for that time. Most people were cashing it in by about 30 or 40 back then. Well, he believed, as well as everybody else who was involved with medicine at the time, that it wasn't just medicine that people needed when they were getting up in years or when they were sick. They needed exercise. They needed to be brought out into the sunshine. They needed to have music. They needed to be involved. They needed to keep working as long as they could. They needed to have stuff going on in their lives. And they probably didn't call it activities, but I call it activities. It's always been important. And as the centuries progressed, as Western medicine progressed and things got a little bit more advanced, they started to develop what they called almshouses. And these were usually run by the churches, almshouses. And these were places where people who were getting on in years, people who were getting sick, people who couldn't work anymore, people who had no families, people who were maybe homeless, they would come and live at these almshouses. Has anybody heard of those before? No, so you've already learned something. Well, they were places usually run by churches, the monasteries, the convents, and they would take in people that needed help, people who were old, people who were sick. And they discovered, or they had known for centuries, that it was very important that they stay busy. So oftentimes the church would have them work in their gardens, work in their workshop, do tasks around the facility, the almshouses. And they would have prayer, and they would have singing of hymns, and they would try and keep them busy, because they knew how important it was to keep their people busy. And I'm going to pass this around. Here's a couple of pictures of almshouses as they were in the late 1800s. It was kind of a popular thing for about 1,000 years until the advent of the modern hospital and nursing home, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, they aren't quite as glamorous as what we're used to, but I think the top one is from somewhere in New York, and this bottom one is somewhere down in the Appalachians of West Virginia. And I'll pass that around so you can look at it. Look at those people. Nobody smiled in photos back then.
They're all glaring.
So people lived in almshouses when they weren't doing well, when they were getting on in years, when they were sick. And then about 1935, people started living longer. They started living past 50 and 60 years. Some were making it to 65.
Woohoo!
Maybe even 70. So this guy, anybody know who this is?
Wilson.
Close.
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt,
Did you
FDR.
guys know?
He came up with a great idea. Does anybody know what he did in 1935?
Social Security.
Social Security. There he is, another good-looking fellow. He came up with an idea that people are going to need help. They're too old to work at 65, but they're still going to live another 5, 10, 15, 20 years maybe. So he came up with Social Security that you would pay a little bit into while you're working, and then when you're old, you can get some of it back. And that worked out pretty well. People were able to pay for some of their care. They were able to pay for their living expenses because they were being taken care of. And then that was continued in 1965. What's a couple of words we hear a lot when we're talking about payment? Medicare and Medicaid. We hear that every day when we're at care conferences or when we're at our morning stand-up. We hear Medicaid and Medicare. And I don't understand how all that works, I'll be honest with you. But I know in 1965, that was another way that people could help support themselves after they got to be older. And nowadays, 65 is nothing. We'll be reading the obituaries every day, and so-and-so died at 74. And we'll go, oh, that wasn't very old. So people are definitely living longer. And that brings in the advent of what we now consider the nursing home, or the care center, or assisted living centers. And it became very obvious by this time that they were going to need to have a staff person to take care of some of these activities. Before it had been the medical staff, if they had time, and volunteers, if they could get them to come in and sing, to come in and play games, to bring in spiritual activities, to come in and play bingo, to bring music in. Well, it became obvious in the 60s and 70s that we're going to have to hire a staff person to take care of some of this stuff. So activities kind of became a legitimate addition to the healthcare teams. And in 1974, don't worry, there's not going to be a test. No quiz here. But in 1974, our government said, you've got to have a program in place in your care centers that provide meaningful activities, music, all those things that people enjoyed when they were living on their own. So now it's mandated that a place like where we are has to have activities. So it is a great thing, and that's why I have you guys all here today, because you are all somehow involved with how we do our activities to improve our residents' lives. Which brings me to objective number 2. You now have gotten a little glimpse of how activities have played a role in the lives of residents and patients all the way back to when Hippocrates lived, and before probably. If you look at your handout, you'll see we are moving right along to objective number 2. I can now tell you a little bit about how activities, the activities department, is a huge part of the whole care team. Every morning we meet as a group of leaders, as a group of care team leaders, and decide, what are we going to do today? How are we best going to take care of our residents today? And we have what we call care plans. Every resident who comes to live with us has a big care plan written for them. And a care plan is a detailed, very specific, goal-oriented plan that we write up for each resident so that everybody on the care team has access to these care plans, so we know the best way to take care of this person. Usually the goals that we set for them are measurable, they're realistic. For example, somebody would come in and become a resident here with really advanced Alzheimer's. We're not going to write a goal for them that they will, create a very intricate piece of artwork, or they will stand up and recite the Gettysburg Address. It'll be something really simple, like they will participate in memory games, or they will participate in some reminiscing, memory sharing activities. And then we have a way of tracking that in our care plans. And I, as the activities director, I can go in and read the nursing's care plans, the dietary care plans, the social workers' care plans, so we all can be on the same page and get to know our residents the best way we can. And then every 3 months, what do we do for our residents? We have a care conference, right? Oh, you were going to say it and I jumped in. When people come in and become residents here, we have an initial care conference. That's when all of the team leaders, the dietary person, social services, nursing, and the activities person, and a loved one or a significant other person in the resident's life, and the resident, we all sit around a table and we talk about what are we going to do? How are we going to best take care of you? How are we going to make it so while you're here with us, you get the best care? And the activities person is fully part of that. And that happens when they come in, and then every 3 months, every quarterly. And if we need to tweak that or make changes to it, if somebody improves, like if somebody comes in a wheelchair and improves in the next few months, we can write up a whole new care plan for them, because now they're up walking around. They can do different things. So we try and track it as close as we can. And one of the departments we really stay in close touch with is PTOT, because we like to see how our residents are improving. Or sometimes they don't improve, sometimes they get worse, sadly, but not everybody improves. And I like to stay in regular conversation with all of the other care team leaders. Frequently in the hall, I will pull aside the PT person and say, how is so-and-so doing? Or I'll pull aside the dietary person. Can this person eat cake? Because we might be having a special event where we're serving cake. Or there might be a swallowing issue. So I like to stay in close touch with all of the other department people to find out what's best for that resident. So now we're going to move on to objective 3. And you're going to play a game. It's a real simple game. All you have to do is throw a beanbag. As I showed you, we are going to learn about the 6 areas of focus in the activities department. And these are physical, emotional, cognitive, social, spiritual, and creative. Who wants to throw the first beanbag? We're going to send a beanbag through one of these holes, and that will determine which one we're going to talk about.
Come on,
because we
Gwen.
don't need to go in any specific order.
Gwen does.
Gwen is going to go for it. Let me move my coffee.
Because I can see so well.
Okay, let's see what we get.
Look out, Sam!
Look out, John.
Uh-oh, try again. Try again.
Try again. I can't even get it.
Oh, you're getting close. One more.
Use those muscles.
Oh! One more.
Throw it at your head.
Oh!
It's bouncing from hole to hole.
There we go!
There
Physical. Okay, we're going to talk about physical. Physical is pretty self-explanatory. When our residents come in, we want them to be as physical as they possibly can be. And it's really up to physical therapy and occupational therapy to really oversee that. I'm not a fitness expert. I don't know that any of our activity staff are fitness experts. But we want to kind of work with, Sam probably is. I want to work with the physical therapy and the occupational therapy to find out what we can do with our people and what kind of fitness level we can participate in with them. We all know, I mean, we live in a health-saturated culture. We all know the benefits of taking care of ourselves. Getting oxygen flowing through our bloodstream, getting our muscles moving, flexibility. And when people get up into their 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s and beyond, I used to have a 102-year-old lady playing balloon volley. You remember them, or her. And there's really no limit in age. We want them to stay as physical as they can, and have some fun and get that blood moving. And the health benefits and the psychological benefits to physical activity are really off the charts. And all of us here in the healthcare profession, we know it. So it's kind of a no-brainer. So definitely we in the activities department really like to focus on that as best as we can. And speaking about physical activity, who wants to throw the next beanbag? Look out, Mercedes.
Oh,
That's your first
You
time.
gonna try from there? Or do you want to come
No.
closer?
I'm scared. I'm
No,
gonna hurt
no
someone.
slam dunking. Uh-oh,
Sad.
I gave it a little spring.
Yeah, I can tell.
There we go,
Emotional.
emotional. Excellent, emotional. Emotional is one of the facets or one of the areas of focus in the activities department. And the whole facility, in fact, emotional. Well, our people who've come to live with us a lot of them are going through a lot of emotions, a lot of detachment. They're grieving. They're saying goodbye to their former life. They're saying goodbye to their independence, many people are. They're saying goodbye to their families, who they don't get to see as much. They're saying goodbye to a lot of the physical things they could once do. They're going through a lot of loss. So we have to be aware of that. And I think one of the biggest roles that activities people play is simply being a friend and being somebody who will listen and be present with our people who are going through a lot of loss. And a lot of them are afraid. A lot of our people are afraid. They're fearful. They're fearful of what's next. What health crisis am I going to have to go through next? Where am I going to live if I can't stay here anymore? What's going to happen? They're afraid of new people. You come into a facility like this and there's 70 other residents and probably 30 or 40 staff people buzzing around and you don't know any of them. I'd be terrified. And I'm a pretty outgoing guy and I would still be scared. They're afraid of their new home. How are they going to adjust? Where's the bathroom? Where's the dining room? They're afraid. And again, we in activities want to be aware of that, and we want to be a friend. A lot of people are going through a lot of cultural change when they come in to stay with us, and that causes a lot of emotions. We have had a lot of people from different cultures. We've had people from Africa here as residents who don't speak any English, and they are not used to a lot of our Western culture. And we have some residents right now who don't speak English very well. And we have to somehow overcome that and still treat them with kindness and dignity even though we can't speak their language. And that's got to be an emotional, powerful experience for them. Feeling of vulnerability. And I know that all of us here, and myself, sometimes I forget, but I want to be aware of that. And I want to be sensitive to that. And just keep in mind that these residents are going through a lot of emotional turmoil right now. Sometimes it's good stuff. Sometimes they find out, I'm going home. I'm going home next week. And that's a very emotional thing. And we want to celebrate with them. We want to continue to be their friends. And we want to be happy with them. All right, who's going to throw the next one?
I'll give it a go. There we go.
Let's see what we're going to talk about next.
All right, let's see.
It has to be a different subject.
Oh,
Trying to get in there.
That's only halfway.
There
There we go. Are you aiming for that one?
I was.
Spirituality. She was going for the hard one. This is kind of a hard one. What do you guys think of when you think of spirituality?
Having church here for them, being able to have the different types of church. like
Absolutely.
Catholic and Lutheran and Baptist. and-
Yep, we think of church. Right away, we think of church and how we like to provide church services for people in the faith tradition they're comfortable with. So we have a whole variety of pastors who come, Lutheran, Baptist, Methodist.
Catholic.
We have Catholic deacons and priests come on there on a different day. But everybody's always welcome at any of the services.
And I am blessed to go to heaven for sure.
Absolutely.
I get it.
But what about people who aren't into church?
Come on.
Not everybody's into church, but I still think people can be spiritual. I think of spirituality as connection. Just being connected to somebody or something. For some people it's not church. Or maybe it's another faith tradition. Not so long ago, going back to a person from Africa, we had an African resident who was Muslim. And every day in her room, she practiced her Muslim faith. She would sit up in bed and she would face the proper direction and she would recite her prayers. And we were respectful of that. We wanted to encourage her to do that. We have a lot of Native American people here and they're not of our traditional Western ideas of religion. And they have, a lot of them have decorations in their rooms that reflect their Native American spirituality. Now what about people who have no religion? I've assessed a lot of people and they're like, I'm not religious at all. I don't have any connection to a church. I don't care about it. But they can still be spiritual. Because I think of somebody just being connected to something. And they might have faith in something. Maybe they have faith in their families. Maybe they have faith in their own intelligence. They have faith in their own ability to recover from the situation they're in. Or they have faith in their ability to be at peace even though their body is failing. Maybe they're connected to another kind of a community outside. Maybe they're connected to a certain staff person here. Maybe they've made friendships here in the building. I think that's a spiritual thing. Being connected. That's the word I try and keep in my mind when I think of spirituality. I think connection. And we in activities like to promote that. We like to encourage it. Do anything we can to help that. We're not here to force our opinions or our beliefs on any resident. We want to support them so that they can feel at home, so that they can feel as happy as possible. And staying connected is one of the best ways to do that. And for me, that's a spiritual experience. Sam? Or Sue? Since you're close, we'll make Sue go.
Oh, sure.
All right, Sue.
Can't be any worse than mine.
Sioux City Sue.
Let's see. Which one we haven't used yet?
There.
Cognitive.
Wow.
I'm a winner.
And
I'm a ball player.
by the way, you're the only one to get a hole in one. First time
I
out.
used to play a lot of baseball.
Cognitive. Again, kind of self-explanatory. We want to try and encourage residents to stay alert, to stay connected to their brains, to their intelligence, as long as they can. One of the first things I do when I meet a new resident is ask, what can I get you to read? What kind of puzzles do you like to do? And I will run and get those as soon as I can, because I want people to continue to keep their minds firing. And maybe one day mine will start firing. Some days, I don't know.
It's debatable.
We have a lot of fun things we do for that. And a lot of times, you're doing a cognitive thing and you know, you're not even aware of it. Your brain is firing and you're working on your memory and you're working on your strategizing. And you might not even be aware of it. And I like to think of one of our residents likes to play a concentration. You know, where you lay down, either you can do it with a deck of cards, but we have a concentration game here that has all these different pictures and you gotta match them. And she's got her own way of playing it, and it's wonderful. She'll pick one up and look at it, and she'll hold it in her hand and look at it, and then she'll just keep flipping, it over until she finds the match for that one. Then she'll put it in and she'll set aside. Then she'll grab another one, she'll look at it, and then she'll just keep flipping until she finds the one to match. You do it the way you want, because it's making her brain work, it's making her eyes work, it's keeping her brain firing, and those are the fun things we like to do with our residents, and it's very important. Because as they say, use it or lose it. So,
John's lost it.
many years ago, simply sitting around telling stories. Those who might have some dementia and aren't able to play games, but they can still talk about maybe their son or their daughter or their husband or what they did when they were growing up. They might still be able to talk about that. Anytime we're getting people to dig into their minds and recall memories and experiences, that's like a mental exercise, and I know when you guys do your 5 Alive exercise, you're really good at that. You're encouraging conversation with our residents who are in that point in their lives, when they're in that point where they're having some dementia struggles. So we, in activities, want to keep that cognition going as long as we can. All right, Sam, which one haven't we done? Creative.
Should I try for it or should I just go with?
Okay.
Or social, I think.
Oh, we haven't done social yet either, have we?
Get it in now.
Ah, social. Social. One of the really neat aspects and focuses. Social, I really kind of dovetail it very closely with spirituality. It doesn't, not religion necessarily, can include religion, but social, we want to keep our people connected. We want to keep them connected to their family, to their friends, to their relatives. We want to keep them connected to the community if we can. That's why we try and take at least once a month, we try and load up our bus and go, if nowhere else, to Walmart. We want to get out in the community. We want to bring community people in. I love bringing entertainers in. I love bringing kids from school groups in. Keeping connections, keeping people social, keeping our people connected is really helping them stay spiritual as well. Last night we had a group of kids come in from a church and we bowled. It was great, everybody was laughing, and we were hitting all kinds of strikes and not so many strikes. But that was a great combination of exercise So we were working on our arms and our standing up and moving around, and we were working on social, because we had a group come in from outside, an intergenerational group. These guys were just 8th graders, even though one was about 6'5".
Oh my goodness.
Holy moly, that guy was big. Social, pretty self-explanatory, but it is one of the things that in activities we really focus on. It's one of the key 6 areas that it's our job to keep these people functioning on a social level if they choose. Now there are people, we do have residents who are very private. They are not people. They like to be alone, they enjoy their solitude, maybe they've always been that way. I've had family members say, oh yeah, Grandma really never liked hanging out with other people. She likes being alone. She likes to read, she likes to watch her shows, and we have to respect that. So that's where the importance of an assessment comes in. We learn early on that this person isn't really social. And at 89 years old, we're not going to force her to be social. But that's good for us in activities to know so that we can give them the best care. And I think we have one left.
Get it. Here you go, Janelle.
Who hasn't thrown yet? Janelle,
I'll get on.
you're not off the hook. I think you
Oh, I
got
hear you, Dottie.
here.
I'm short, but I just don't really want
Let's
to.
make it easy for
He's
you.
gonna make it easy.
I gotta go back to work.
Oh! Here,
There you
Good
go.
job.
slam dunk. Creativity. Now, there isn't, it's not a whole lot in the literature, if you will, about activities that has a category called creative. Yes, indeed, we do talk about doing arts and crafts and things like that, but I like to expand my definition of creativity just to include the word being productive. Being productive. People want to be productive. They want to be productive as long as they can be. And that could be coming to a crafts project. That could be painting a picture. That could be knitting, making things. But also it could just be, hey, I want to help around here. I want to help around here. And that's why I'm really glad we have a person here with us today. While a resident, you are also a volunteer helper in the activities department. Because you want to stay involved. You want to stay productive. And I think that's fabulous. And if we in the activities department can help with that, I'm happy to do it. Being creative, of course, can include arts and crafts, which we try and do every week at least once. We try and encourage our people who like to do it on their own to do it. See a lot of people knitting. See a lot of people, coloring has really gotten on.
Mm-hmm.
I would say half our residents color.
Yeah.
They sit in their room and color, or they sit in the dining room and color. Being creative, stirring up that part of their brains, feeling like they're enhancing the beauty of the place where they live. Being creative is having a desire to be productive and enhance the beauty of the world we live in, the place we live in. I know that comes spring, hopefully next week. We're going to start planting flowers. And I know we have some residents who want to help with that. That's being creative. That's helping make the place more beautiful, make the place more pleasing, and feeling that sense of work and being involved and being productive. To me, that's creativity. And it takes a little load off us, staff people, if we can get residents to help us. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
So we have talked about the 6 areas of focus in the activities department. If we thought about it, we could probably come up with 6 subcategories for each one of these, and then 6 subcategories for all of those 6. It's very, very involved and very complicated, taking care of people, but it is so rewarding. Lena apparently was not willing to do that for Ole. She was not willing. She said, Ole, you're going to die. And she was not willing to do the hard work and the energy of getting really involved in his life. But we in the activities department have to do that. And may it be so. And thank you very much.